former Board of Commissioners majority briefly did away with many building codes for residents in unincorporated areas of the county. Explain your stance on the county's current building codes, and will you preserve them, or are you open to significantly reducing them?
Okay, so the decision to go to the opt-out, it wasn't an actual abolishment of the building codes. It was giving people the opportunity to opt out, which incidentally runs counter to Idaho code. Idaho code does not define an opt-out. In Idaho code, you can have codes, building codes, or you cannot have them. Okay, so when that vote was taken by the prior board, I dissented. I wanted to keep the codes as mandatory. 1 year later, my two former co-commissioners were voted out, and we reinstituted them as mandatory with a 2-to-1 vote. And I would continue to maintain those codes. And incidentally, once the decision was made to reinvoke the codes, I appealed to the Attorney General's office for a decision. And what came back was that the opt-out did not comport, did not agree with Idaho code. So the idea of mandatory building codes is what provides people with permits, periodic inspections, and some assurance that what was built correctly. And incidentally, lenders had a problem with the opt-out, insurance companies had a problem with the opt-out, and so has our community development organization, because some of these folks went to sell their homes, couldn't get mortgages, came back to community development and asked, what do we do? How about tearing up some walls so that you can get an engineering certification? Good luck with that, and it's very costly. The building codes in a county of this size need to be maintained.
Mr. Matari, same question.
Well, I have no desire to want to change building codes. I think the way they are is just fine. The reality is that there should be a minimum standard for any kind of structure that's built here. A buyer should have confidence that it's met that standard, and that the seller should be able to present it meeting that standard. So I have no desire to want to change the building codes. Now, I would like to address a little bit my opponent, because it's kind of funny that despite given the information and me publicizing it, he insists upon ignoring that when he talks about my past. This is really more like a Rorschach print, similar to that picture of the pretty woman or the old lady. And he insists upon seeing the old lady and not the pretty woman. The reality is that when he talks about attorneys generals, these folks contacted me years after I had resigned. I was only with that company for 14 months, but he wants to paint it as if I was there for years and years and years and years. The reality is that they contacted me and I gladly assisted them in the prosecution of my former employer years after I had left. There was nothing that I was doing that was questionable. And in fact, I started a competing business that was wildly successful, still is in business today, still earns plenty of money for me. And that, I don't have these issues. I've never had these issues, but he keeps wanting to try to plant the seed of doubt in people. And he's the only person who seems to believe this, because anyone I talk to, anyone I show the documents to, including the editor of the CDA Press, recognizes the fact that I actually helped in the prosecution of my former employer years after I resigned. It's just the reality of it.
Right.